Hey guys, what's up? Public back with another video, and this is the kind of last recap video I want to go for. Talking about legendaries today. So there's been like some development with a few of our legendaries over the past couple of weeks, so I kind of wanted to refresh everyone with like the state of the legendaries on the Shadowlands beta. So let's dive in, see what our legendaries are up to, and which ones are fun to play with. Okay, so starting off with my personal, I guess, favorite of the bunch, Eternal Call to the Void. So this guy, it's a consistent, decent legendary. It's a spawning Mind Tendril legendary, which is always really fun. And it is somewhat versatile in that if you cast Mind Flay, you get a Mind Flay Tentacle proc. If you cast Mind Seer, you have a chance to get a Mind Seer Tentacle proc. So in that sense, it is somewhat versatile in what it's doing. Some of the design choices are a little weird. So like specifically, the Mind Seer Tentacle does not give you AoE Insanity Generation. You still get the same Insanity Generation as if it procced a singular Mind Flay. You just get the bonus that now the damage can AoE. So that part is a little, I guess, not what I'd expect, so I don't know if that's a bug or not. It was working that way previously, but is what it is. But again, this is our consistently decent legendary, so, from the face of things, if nothing changes the way it is right now, this is probably the legendary you want to shoot for getting first, especially if you're kind of like a raid-focused person, or maybe you like to do a bit of a mix. If you do kind of like maybe favor Mythic Plus dungeons, you could go with something else, but Call to the Void is going to be, generally speaking, a very solid legendary, no matter what kind of content you're doing, as long as you can cast Mind Flay and Mind Seer. So obviously PvP is a little bit different, but there it is. Okay, so moving on to Shadowflame Prism. Unfortunately, the nerf bat has driven this guy into the ground. This legendary, unfortunately, just doesn't do enough damage anymore, which is really a shame because the playstyle of it I thought personally was a lot of fun to play with. You effectively got an alternative build where you could say, while you have your Mindbender or Shadow Fiend up, prioritizing those Shadow or Death Mind Blast cast to get that 5-target cleave off, which honestly just felt really great. The fact that it teleported Mindbender and Shadow Fiend was even better. And some of the synergies you could get with, taking the Rabid Shadows Conduit, all this kind of stuff played off of each other. Unfortunately, this thing has been nerfed so much that using it anywhere besides dungeons is probably a no-go, and even inside of dungeons, it's still not that good. You're talking about 2, maybe 3% at best, and the biggest problem here is that it's actually a DPS loss starting at 4 targets when you're comparing this up against Searing Nightmare, which, let's face it, Searing Nightmare is definitely going to be our bread and butter come Shadowlands. So it's just really disappointing to see because before it was basically very competitive with Searing Nightmare up to starting with 6 targets is where you'd start to fall off just because, well, Shadowflame Prism only hits 5 targets, so that actually made sense. And you had a reasonably good playstyle choice if you're like, okay, hey, I'm fighting 3, 4, 5 targets. Shadowflame Prism is going to be great here. But now it's like, oh, you hit 4, now it sucks. And it's like, that really stinks. The tuning really needs to be that 5 targets is where it's good at. Past that, it stops being good or whatever. Because right now, it's not going to see a whole lot of use. Mythic Plus Dungeons, maybe. Especially maybe in those weeks where you don't take Searing Nightmare, it could be better. But again, the nerfs just hit this guy too hard. So hopefully they reel it in a little bit more. Moving on to Talbadar Stratagem. So this is the kind of coined the Mind Blast legendary. Frankly, this guy is just awkward to play around with. So specifically, Mind Blast is the thing you want to use on cooldown as much as possible, especially out of Void form. The problem is you don't exactly want to do that while you're using Talbadars, at least you don't think you do, depending on sims, of course, because you want to make sure you have Mind Blast off cooldown as much as possible while Devouring Plague is active, right? And again, if you're struggling to get Insanity to cast Devouring Plague, you might be sitting on that cooldown longer than you should, which then result in a potentially DPS loss. So if you just played the sucker normally, which is currently the way that the sim is wired and it's working reasonably well, it's still not beating Eternal Call to the Void in single target, which is a problem, right? This legendary should be far and away best in slot on single target. Right now, it's just not, and that's primarily, I think, because of how awkward it is to play around, and that's just a shame, right? Another thing that's really contributing to this is that Mind Blast damage itself just isn't good enough, right? So if you multiply something that does 0 damage by 5,000%, it still does 0 damage. And while Mind Blast, of course, doesn't do 0 damage, it's not a big damage dealer for us right now. Even if you're taking something like Psychic Link, that still doesn't give us much more value. It does hike it up a little bit, but again, Psychic Link is still worse than Auspicious Spirits, even if you're using this legendary. So it's kind of it's in a balancing nightmare right now, and it's awkward to use, so hopefully they fix one or if not both of those guys. Okay, and then moving on to our last Shadow Priest specific legendary, we have Painbreaker Psalm. They have given this guy a bit of tweaks semi-recently. The problem is, I think the tweaks actually hurt the legendary more than they help it. So what they did was, Painbreaker Psalm now consumes 8 seconds of your dots, up from 6 seconds. So you do get more instant damage from Painbreaker Psalm. The problem is, that's actually caused it to be a significant DPS loss to use on any target that's going to live, right? So before, it was actually better to weave in Shadow Word Death throughout a fight because you have Painbreaker Psalm, sacrifice a bit of your dots, and then get that instant cast damage and then move on, get that extra insanity. But now that's just not the case, and you just spend so much time redotting now because 8 seconds is significantly more than 6 that you just kind of start losing value. And it's like, well, okay, then I take Misery, but it's like, well, you could have taken Twist of Fate, and now you're at a loss because you have to redot more. That's more GCDs you could have been mind flaying. It's just kind of a mess with that. So then if it's like, okay, well, then you only use it in Execute, which is kind of hard to pull off consistently sniping targets, especially if you're in a Mythic Plus environment where everyone's trying to snipe, especially if you have like a monk that's Touch of Deathing or whatever else it is. I mean, half the classes in the game have executes again, so this is getting a little bit tougher. So again, you're not making that easier. Like that window doesn't get bigger with this, and it's kind of a mess, right? The insanity part of it is definitely nice, but if you're also using Death and Madness, that means you're killing a mob, getting the potentially up to 20 from the legendary, another 40 from Death and Madness per target. That's for sure overkill, right? You're probably just chaining these together, and at some point you're just going to cap Insanity, and you're not going to be able to use it to max effectiveness. The Insanity was only really nice above Execute, and they've kind of just thrown that in the trash. So, I don't know, this Legendary just needs a fresh start, in my opinion. I would, quick fix, just make it give Shadow Word Death 2 charges maybe. I don't know, reduce the cooldown, maybe reduce the pushback. All kinds of stuff they could do. But the whole consuming dots thing is just not going to play out very well, unfortunately, for this legendary. So, there you go. And then, guys, I do want to quick give 2 honorable mentions to this video. I haven't done dedicated videos to these yet, just because they keep getting tweaked so much, so I don't know what to say. But I will tell you, I did work on doing Sephuz's Proclamation implementation into SimC, into the Shadow module. Unfortunately, it's not that great. We do have an ability to proc it on cooldown, but even doing so, again, it's not giving that much life, which is really, really unfortunate. I don't know, it's just worse than the Legion version, which is just kind of sad to see. I wish it was as good as that one, but unfortunately, guys, that's how it is for right now. The other one I want to talk about is Echo of Eonar. So I didn't really mention any damage numbers in this video, except that relative strength. But for the most part, the top end of our legendaries is hovering around 5.5% with Eternal Call to the Void. Everything else is kind of trickling down after that at like 3-2%, whatever it is. Now, keep that in mind because there is a healer legendary, and yes, you heard me, healer legendary, called Echo of Eonar. So Echo of Eonar increases your damage done by 5%. No ifs, ands, or buts. That's it, 5%. Which is already basically our best in slot. If you consider it's way more consistent than Eternal Call to the Void. It's just 5% damage, right? Why wouldn't you love that? And in addition, your damage abilities have a chance to proc an effect to give that effect to 3 nearby allies for 15 seconds. So safe to say, either this Echo of Eonar legendary is overpowered in the sense that for a DPS player, it is our best in slot, which is weird, or all of our other legendaries are terrible and need to get buffed. I don't really know. Maybe it's a combination of the two, but it's very, very strange to start looking at just potential for this Echo of Eonar legendary and see it just beat out all of our other ones. And frankly, it's just really sad, especially considering we had some pretty fun legendaries that, really changed our play style, gave us interesting things to play around inside of Legion, and now we don't have that, and it's really sad to see. So hopefully they get the tuning right on these guys. I've made a giant forum post explaining all of these points below. So please go give that a like. Go check that guy out. I mean, the more people look at it, the better. We need Blizzard to really pay attention to this because this is the core system of Shadowlands. Let's make sure we get it right. The base spec for Priest is great, but the Legendaries and Covenants and everything else, it's pretty meh. So anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching. Big thank you to the patrons that are supporting me. I've been cranking out a lot more videos lately just because of them supporting me directly, which is great. Thank you so much. And guys, we will see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.